Alright, I don't know how I managed to lose both my phone and my wallet in one fell swoop. Oh, there they are. Well, that's not a good noise. Before I start, my headphones are telling me that the headphones are gonna die soon. With their polite little beeps. Why is it still beeping? Is it not? Did it get unplugged? Why are you beeping? Hold on, I'm just trying to figure out why I have a beeping in my headphones. Alright, that was way too loud in my ears. Alright, let's make it so you guys can at least hear it. Alright. Now we got some funky music in the background. Let's get into it. Hopefully that'll stop the beeping, or at least won't hear the beeping anymore. And hopefully you guys can hear me just fine. So, my name is Mark. This is the Horsehead Weekly, week number 9. Your weekly dose of Horsehead Fantasy Football League news. And it was a fairly quiet week this week in terms of trades and stuff like that. But before we can get into what happened this week, we need to look back at what happened last week. And we're going to start that out by going fast right on into it. And with last week, we had a couple of very important matches going on. For starters, we had Mike trying to move to 7 wins, which is probably enough to make the playoffs. Typically you need 7 or 8 wins to really lock that down in this league. He failed to do that and let Doug move on up to 5-3, only 1 game back, and now with the head-to-head tiebreaker over him, which could matter for seeding later on if those two are tied for second place or something. That would mean Doug would get the bye and Mike would get thrown down into the 3-6 fight to make it to the semifinals. And in the other end of the spectrum, we had another important fight, Milk versus Nick. Nick didn't put up much of a fight, but Malcolm didn't put up any fight. only putting up 110 points, the second lowest in the league. Me not even showing up to the fight with 107, but I'll get to myself in a minute. So that means that he moves down to 2-6, and then in a odd twist, trades for somebody who's a very good player, but on a bye this week. 6 losses is probably the limit if you want to really make a run for the playoffs. You might be able to get in with 8, but he's going to have to be nearly perfect from here on out. And he's making some very interesting moves going on there. But now for everybody else, I ended up falling to Dave. As I said, didn't put up any fight at all, didn't even show up to the fight. So Dave gets the cruise on through to 4-4, where he is tied with me, but he owns a tiebreaker over me now, as those are becoming more and more important each and every week. Sean ends up beating out Jerry, so Jerry also falls to 4-4. James ends up beating Tyler by putting up an absolutely monster 171 points, but not to be outdone, his brother put up 186 points. Continuing the trend of if you are playing Matt M, you will score the most points in that week. Poor guy, he ends up falling to 2-6, completely undeserved though, and I really do feel bad for him. That puts the standings to this, and if you want to take a look down here, if you look at everyone's points for, you see a lot of people in like the mid, thousands, 1007, 1083, 1031, in that general range. And everyone's real close to one another in that area. And that is where you'll find Matt M. But his points against are just the most in the league. And it's by a pretty decent clip, with the only one even in the same ballpark as him being Mike. And Mike was able to weather the storm because he's been putting up absolutely just ungodly numbers to go to 6-2. But poor Matt M, he wasn't able to have that same luck, and he is 2-6 for the season so far. So what do we have going on in each division? In the Skull House, we have a very, very close division still, only 1 game difference, with me and Doug still yet to play for the first time. We are the only pair of teams in the same division who have not played yet in the first round robin. So we will be running into each other sometime soon, I would assume, maybe next week, the week after, something like that. So yeah, it's going to be that's going to tell a lot about the league, because that could pull Doug back down into a scrum with Jerry, myself, and Doug, and then it'll be all down to those last 3 weeks and those head-to-heads one more time. So that'll be really interesting to see how that goes. In Kathy's Kids, again, I'm really going to be hammering on divisions and tiebreakers and stuff like that moving forward, because we are, this is week 9 of 13. There's only 5 more games that you'll be able to play throughout the rest of the season to make before the playoffs. So they're very, very important. Every game's super important now. In Kathy's Kids, we have Matt, then James, then Milk. Matt has the 2-0 tiebreaker in the division, which means it's going to be very, very difficult for him to be caught. And especially it's going to be very hard for him to be caught by James, because James only he's 0-2 in the division. So even if he beats Matt, he's going to need Malcolm to beat Matt. If they tie, he can have a chance at the tiebreaker, because it's very, very rough going in that division. It looks like Matt S and his team being as good as it is and everything, he's starting to really look like he is taking over that division. For the Insiders, it is definitely the weakest division in terms of wins, but I don't think it's the weakest division in terms of teams, because you do have 2 very good teams in it with both Dave and Matt. They're both playing very well. The issue being that both have losses head-to-head against Nick. So he controls the tiebreakers in the division, and he's only 1 game back of the leader. And Matt M, for all of the issues he's had, for all of the losses he's been given unfairly, because he just keeps running into buzzsaws week after week after week, he is still, through all of that, only 2 games back of the leader in the division, with a head-to-head game against that leader still to come. And he's only 1 game back of Nick, who has $1 of fab left when I took this picture. I think he might have made a trade to get some fab since then, but he's just... I think Matt M could make a run and win the division and maybe get in worse than a wild card record-wise, but definitely with a better team, and he could definitely make whoever the last, whoever one that team is that runs into him, feel real bad about themselves. And then finally, we have the outsiders who are looking like they're going to be taking one of the buys and then one of the wild cards with the 2-6-2 teams, but with the parity in that division for head-to-head and, win-loss and all that type of stuff. I think it's going to be really good, but you can't count Tyler out. He makes moves every week to make his team just a little better, and by the end of the season, he's going to have a juggernaut. He might already have a juggernaut. You'll have to wait for the power rankings to see that one. But I really like the direction that, Tyler's team's headed. I think Mike and Sean may be looking a little suspect. They're still great teams. They're still, top-end teams, but I think that they're definitely not the strongest teams in the division by, easily you can look at it and say that those two are the better two. And especially after the 0-3 start, or maybe 0-4 start Tyler had, he's been definitely on a bit of a tear lately. So that division is another one that I think could close up. So really, every division still wide open. Anything can happen. But yeah, so just be on the lookout for more information, more in-depth standings moving forward. Next week I might have to break out the, because I think we might be getting close to some people not being able to win divisions and stuff like that. So I have to break out something in a week or two. But this week I don't think anyone can get eliminated, and I don't think next week either. So we'll hold on to that for now. But when I talk about being eliminated, somebody was eliminated last week in the Eliminator. That's right, the Eliminator, everyone's favorite mini game, where you win $50 just by playing fantasy football and hoping that you have the best team every given week. So let's look at what we have going on here. Last week, Tyler, Sean, and Dave M all had just not typical days for them. Typically, they're a lot better than that, but also the strike line is typically a lot lower than 150. That was the highest strike line of the season. Only the second time the strike line's been above 130. And because of that, Tyler, despite putting in a pretty good week and putting in, I think it was like a top 5 effort on the week, he does end up getting that strike. That is his third, and he has been eliminated. He went 4 weeks without a strike. In the last 4 weeks, he got 3, so that means he is out. He is gone. Welcome to the Black Pit of Despair. And so let's see what else we have going on here. It looks like Dave M and Sean, because both of them got their second strike, which they both have had back-to-back strikes, that's not great. And that means that they are both down to 2 strikes, which brings them down to Matt S. and Doug, who both had their strikes earlier in the season. And Mike continues to go back-to-back weeks now, where he is the cut line. So if one team beat him that was under him, he would have got a strike. He managed to dodge it 2 weeks in a row now, and remains at 0 strikes. And now that you're down to only 5 teams left, Mike, Matt S., Doug, Dave, and Sean, 2 teams will be getting a strike this week, which means no matter what happens at the end of this week, at least one team will be eliminated. And if Mike doesn't get a strike, if he manages to dodge it again for the 3rd week in a row, that means that, or actually for the 8th week in a row of dodging a strike, he's yet to get one. If he manages to not get a strike, we will be down to 1 strike a week, and that is pretty spooky. And I don't know. I got a feeling that this might be the week that Mike ends up faltering. He might fall down into those bottom 2, because I think, Dave, Doug, Matt M, Sean, they're all got very good teams going on. And Mike's team, who knows? This could be the week that he finally gets a strike, and we could have 2 more strikes again next week. So we might be cleaning this up a little bit earlier than last year, but we'll have to see how that ends up going. But that is it for the Eliminator. Let's move on to the other $50 incentive we have. It is the Roto World, yes. And as always, you get points based on where your position is and everything like that. I think everyone understands at this point how that goes. So who do we have going on here? We have Sean at number 1 for the quarterback position. He continues to do an absolutely fantastic job this year, and he ends up actually leapfrogging Dave M this week. Dave M having a pretty bad week with his quarterback, and Tyler also faltering on his quarterback, allowing Sean to move a little bit ahead of him, but he does make up ground on Dave, so I guess he nets being a little bit farther closer to first place, but that's still where he is. He's the I think it's those top 3 really fighting right now for that top spot, but again, we're only 8 weeks in. This is the halfway point of Roto World, because Roto World does continue all the way through week 15 and 16. So week 17 does not count. It is only until we have our championship game. So week 16 is how long this goes. We were halfway there, and at this point, it looks like we're starting to definitely have some people near the bottom who are starting to, really get desperate. I mean, Jerry's had a couple really good weeks after some trades and stuff like that. I've had a couple decent weeks. Doug's been really coming on the last couple weeks, really flying up those charts. But yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this goes moving forward. But as of now, Sean is in the driver's seat for the quarterback. Moving over to running back, we have Mike in the driver's seat here. I mean, he's just had an absolutely fantastic team every single week, with Christian McCaffrey just absolutely being absolutely just bonkers the first 5 weeks. But since then, he's come back to the pack a little bit like that. He's still fantastic, but he has come back a little bit. And because of that, Mike has fallen from being the clear-cut, far and away number one guy. He's gone. No one can catch him. To the clear-cut, far away, no one can catch him. Top guy who also has James up there with him. As James has moved himself through some very, very good weeks the last 2 weeks with Dalvin Cook and company, to move himself up to only being 5 points back of Mike. With everybody else really, maybe Dave could put a run together or something like that. He's only 50 points back. But even though we're only halfway through, I think it'll take a lot of effort for anyone else to catch up to Mike and James at this point. But a lot of teams still in the middle in that scrum. I mean, from 108 to 80 points, that's not even 30 points. There's a lot of teams in there. So like Matt S., if he goes on a tear and he can move up to those top to 4th place and he can jump over everybody else, Tyler, Doug, myself, blah, 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 he could end up moving himself from only getting 1 point to 8 points. So it's still worth it for everyone to be putting an effort on these things, maybe figuring out where you can, win a little bit here, a little bit there. But really, this is the more for fun side of it, but, just keep an eye out on what you can do with trades and stuff like that to make this really click. Over in wide receiver, it is, again, Mike at number 1. Cooper Kupp had an absolutely bonkers week. And he has a couple other players who've been doing really, really well, so he puts a little bit of distance between him and everybody else. And and he has Jerry there at 22 points. He doesn't have anyone as close as James from the last one, but he has a lot more people who are still within striking distance. Really, everyone from Doug up to Jerry are all in a bit of a scrum. They're all kind of, clawing at each other, trying to get themselves up there near the top. And all it's going to take is for someone to have a wide receiver that wasn't doing great the weeks before to come online, and just really, or maybe make a trade for a really good wide receiver. And they could definitely make a run up to Mike if, he ends up faltering at all at wide receiver. For tight end, I mean, Hoop, there it is, Austin Hooper. He's been absolutely fantastic all season long, and that is why Matt S. continues to be at number 1. He's just riding the best tight end for the season, and it's working out really well for him as he puts more distance between him and everybody else. And because there's only one tight end every week that scores for you, it makes it really hard for anyone to really catch up. Matt M. is the only one who, in theory, could have a guy go off 1 week. Matt S. has a bad week, and then suddenly Matt M.'s number 1. But I think this might be Matt S.'s throne to defend, as he is currently the king of the hill up there at number 1. And, but there's a lot of people, again, very close to each other. So really anything can happen in the lower tiers, and moving up a couple spots is worth a bunch of points. So that's always good to have going on. Down at defensive line, as we now shift over to the defensive side of things, we have Sean at number 1, with Doug right on his heels, and then Tyler right there again after 2 bonkers weeks, really putting himself in that discussion to be the number 1 defensive line guy. And then you have, a little pocket there of Mike, Nick, and Malcolm, and then you have everybody else just kind of doing their best. But yeah, another very close matchup here where, all it takes is for Tyler and Doug to move up a little bit. All of a sudden, Sean loses 5 points, so anything can happen with that. For the linebackers, we have Matt M. up there at number 1, just absolutely killing it with, I believe it's Luke Kuechly. Just phenomenal. What this is thing with defenses, because you only have one every single week starting. Oftentimes you just find yourself in a position where if you just get the guy who's the best guy every week, it's really hard for other people to, if they're streaming or something like that, to really be hitting constantly. So they're trying to get like their guy who's really, really good. And in Matt M, he just has the best guy in the league. It's not even close, and because of that, he is running away with it at number 1. But again, a nice little scrum behind him, and then another scrum even below that. Down for defensive back, Matt S is killing it with Landon Collins, I'm going to say, doing very, very well this season. He is. And then, so he's just got a lot going on there. But this is a lot closer than the other two because you have Mike right behind him at 13 points behind. That could be made up in 1 week, as we saw last week when Mike was ahead of Matt S, and then Matt S put up a big week, put that gap together. So congratulations on Mike on making that jump. And but yeah, I think this is another very close matchup. It could, a lot of people could make a lot of stuff happen. And then finally, in kickers, the worst position in fantasy football. We have Malcolm at number 1 with his ungodly high pick. It was like the 9th round to get Justin Tucker, and it has been paying off for him. He has managed to get on average, what is that, like, I'm doing quick math on air, something I should probably not be doing. He's getting about, up to 4 points per week over other teams just from his kicker. That's pretty gnarly. But if you look at, like, normal teams, like everyone from Doug up, he's getting, about a point per week from his kicker, which is probably worth a 9th round pick. That's all I'm going to say about that. And then finally, we get to this glorious screen at the end as Mike continues to sit at number 1 with his running back and wide receiver both being fantastic, and his linebacker and defensive back both helping out a lot as well. But Matt S is moving up a little bit now that he's taken over the defensive back role, and he's only 7 points back of Mike. Sean falls down 1 to move to number 3. Tyler and Doug both jump up, as does James. And I, Malcolm, and Matt M all fall me pretty hard, actually. I don't know what happened to me. Besides my team being trash, I know that happened. But yeah, so that's what's going on in the Roto world. So let's stop looking at the past. Let's move forward. Let's look at what's going on this week. And we already have some points come in because we have had Thursday Night Football happen already, and I took these pictures after Thursday Night Football on Friday. So if anyone's made any transactions, anything like that, then, just ignore them. They're going to be a little bit different here. But what we have is a bunch of really, really cool matchups coming on this week. For example, we have Sean versus Milk. A lot of people are going to be rooting for Malcolm this week because everyone wants to see the guy who's at 6-2 lose a couple games so everyone can catch up to them, so they have a better chance of making that wild card spot, and especially Mike and Tyler definitely wanting that to happen because that's a division rival. So that's a really interesting game going on there. Then we have a couple of games that are, just people who are in the middle really fighting for their lives here with James versus Nick. James looking to maybe take Nick out of the conversation of making the playoffs because, again, 6 losses is going to be very hard to come back from this early on in the season unless you have a division that you can really climb out of. And Nick does. He's in that same division that's led by a team that's 4-4 right now. But it's going to be tough. It's still going to be tough. So, yeah, they got that going on. And then below that, we have Dave versus Matt S. Matt S not having a great start to his week, but he still has a good possibility of making stuff happen with it. And if Dave ends up taking out Matt S, I think that could be a really, really happy days for Milk because he will, if he gets a win, he could easily be putting himself back in the conversation of winning the division if he puts up some pretty good numbers. And then in the other games, we have people like Tyler and Doug, who are both looking to put up just bonkers numbers this week, as they both had very good Thursday nights. And Tyler and Doug both being very good teams as well on top of that, so it's going to be really interesting how that goes. And then at the top, we have myself versus Matt M, who at the time that I took this picture, there was only a difference of 0.01 points in the projection. It's going to be a very, very close game this week. So let's see what we have for the game of the week this week, and it is Doug versus Tyler. Doug looking to get a win so he can put some distance between himself and his division mates. Really, really trying to go out there and just kill it this week. Both to take out Tyler as a potential rival for a wild card spot in the event the division doesn't go his way, and also because of the quality of opponent for both myself and Jerry. If he gets a win here and we get some losses, that gets him 2 games clear. And also, he will be in a pretty good spot for tiebreakers and stuff like that. So, definitely a big game for Doug this week as far as consolidating power inside the division. Where on the other side, we have Tyler, who does not have a grip on the division, does not even have a sniff at the division at the moment. But because of how good his team is, if he can take out Doug, he will only be 1 game back of Doug, have the tiebreaker on him, which means that that's huge going into the wild card time, and it also makes it so that Tyler will be one game closer to catching up to his division mates. So I think this is going to be a very, very good game. I think it's going to be very high scoring. It's going to be very close, and I'm really excited to see how this is going to end up shaking out. So that is our game of the week. And now for the deal of the day. If we go from the deal, sorry about that. Technical difficulties with my mouth. So in the deal of the day this week, we have a very interesting trade. What we have is a team that is currently in the lead in their division, in Dave, trading away George Kittle, who was is one of those top end tight ends. He's a very solid tight end. As his best player, he's trading away for Nick Chubb, which is a definite plus. But what he got back in the other two with Mark Andrews was a huge downgrade at tight end. He's still a pretty decent tight end, but he's still a huge downgrade on Kittle. And Auden Tate, who might not even be rosterable after next week if A.J. Green comes back and Tyler Boyd continues to play well. And then on the other hand, you have Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards coming in to replace Nick Chubb, which is a downgrade because you're going from Nick Chubb, who's a running back 1, down to a player who is, definitely not a running back 1. He's a high-end running back 2, but still running back 2 at this point. Those first 3 weeks look like a bit of a apparition that only existed apparently to torture Tyler. But yeah, Mark Ingram, definitely a downgrade, but overall, I think this is a really smart trade for both sides. When you are a team that has a weaker roster from top to bottom, sometimes breaking up a stud player for 2 players that are very good is what you have to do. And with Nick's roster being in pretty bad shape, if I do say, it was a really good idea for him to go out and do what he did. He broke up a really good player, Nick Chubb, to get 2 very good players. And for somebody who is in the lead in their division, looking towards the playoffs and stuff like that, buying in on a player which has a lot of upside in Mark Andrews, if that offense continues to click, that could be a very, very good player to be holding on to as, tight ends. They're very scarce this year. Every year, everyone's like, oh, there's like 15 tight ends this year that are going to be playable. There's only about 7 tight end 1s this season, and there's 12 teams that need a tight end. That's not great. He ended up getting one of them in Mark Andrews back, so he downgraded, but he didn't downgrade all the way into like the streaming category. And then he also got Nick Chubb, who, while he is questionable for some things, I thought it was a very good pickup for him because now he has a player that he can just drop into his running back slot, say, all right, we're going, let's make this happen, let's go the rest of the season. So, honestly, I think this is a very good trade for everybody involved. And now for the hot take of the week. Again, I didn't actually really come up with this as the hot take of the week, but I did mention it in chat, and then everyone was like, this is a really interesting thing to talk about. So what you're looking at right now is you are looking at Mike's team that he drafted this season. Starting off with number 1, Christian McCaffrey. Some people were kind of like, oh, Christian McCaffrey, that makes me nervous, because he's so small and he's been getting so much work. Maybe he's going to get hurt. What if that offense isn't as good as it used to be? Blah, blah, blah. Well, the dude's been the number 1 player in fantasy this season. I don't think anyone would really doubt that. I think if you're doing a redraft right now, Christian McCaffrey would be the number 1 pick by 70 to 80% of players. I think he's just absolutely a fiend. And so, yeah, he's been absolutely fantastic. So congratulations on getting him number 1. That was a really good pick on your part. Now as we move along, we have Keenan Allen, who's also been on an absolute tear. Now, he is injured at this point, so, it isn't as good. But I think Keenan Allen, before the injury, he definitely would have been a player that people were taking in the early second round, late first round on a redraft. So, yeah, definitely well drafted with Keenan Allen. Then we run into the first issue, and there's not many on this list. There's only a couple that I look at and I'm like, that was not a good pick. Zach Ertz. Now, going into the season, taking Zach Ertz there, fine. Definitely defendable. A lot of people were taking him at the 2-3 turn, stuff like that, after they and he had a really great start on his draft, going running back, wide receiver, tight end, locking up 3 really important positions, knowing that quarterback always falls in our league. That was a great decision on his part to just go bang, 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 get those guys, and then fill in behind them. The issue became Zach Ertz didn't perform this year. Goddard is just really sucking up a lot of red zone targets, so Zach Ertz isn't able to put up those gaudy tight touchdown numbers that he had last season. And the yardage and the targets really just aren't there because there's a lot of mouths to feed on that offense. You have a lot of people who are demanding touches, and I mean that's not a bad thing for Philly. Philly's making it work. It's good for them. It's just that Zach Ertz hasn't been getting quite as many looks as he was before, and that's negatively impacting him. Now, is he still a good football player? Oh yeah, he's a fantastic football player. Just for fantasy, not really working out this season. But then we have Mark Ingram, who I just talked about, is a high-end running back 2, and to get a high-end running back 2 at the end of round 4 is fantastic value, especially in a league like ours where people get taken that high. And then you run into Chris Godwin, who's a wide receiver 1 this season, both on his team, as he's basically made Mike Evans into the wide receiver 2 there, and also in the league. I think he's definitely, arguably, a round 2 pick at this point. Allen Robinson, I think he's a top 4 pick, top 4 round pick. Maybe 5, actually, but I think you got him at really good value at the end of the 6th round. And then we run into 2 speed bumps with Baker Mayfield, who a lot of hype coming into the season. Really good at the end of last season. He's been absolutely garbage this year. So that's your second hiccup. Your third hiccup is right after that with Kalen Ballage. A lot of people are saying he's going to be the guy this year. And while in a touchdown-only league, he's been pretty decent because he has been just falling into the end zone from time to time, and he's been getting a lot of red zone touches. He just hasn't really been performing because he's not been getting enough touches. They've been going a lot more to Mark Walton, who, it was a guy who they basically signed as let's see if you can do something. And he's been doing something. I don't know how long he's going to last on this team. He could just be a tank year guy, and then he's out the door next year because we draft somebody good, or he's a backup next year because we draft somebody good. But yeah, he hasn't been working out. But then again, we just go on an absolute tear here. Like, there's really no one besides the deep picks, like the flyer picks, that are bad. Darius Leonard, when he's healthy this season, he's been absolutely phenomenal. Courtland Sutton, he's a top 6 round pick at this point. Now, that could change significantly after this week because you have the issues of, Joe Flacco's hurt, so he's out for the rest of the season, so you have some random dude off the street. I don't even know. I legitimately don't know. Some random dude just throwing the football to him. And you no longer have Emmanuel Sanders out there, so teams can just look at Courtland Sutton and maybe just go, okay, cool. Double team that guy. Make the and then stack the box, and then, what's their offense? I don't think they really have one at that point in Denver. But then he has Landon Collins, who's been one of the best safeties. Jameson Crowder, who went off early in the season. I think is going to start going off in the back half of the season with Sam Darnold. Cameron Jordan, who's been an absolute beast. Harrison Butker, who's been not an absolute beast, but very, very good. And then, yeah, you took some people at the end of the list there, but those were all flyers at that point. I mean, just absolutely fantastic draft by him. In a draft, if you offered me the team that he drafted today, I would 100% take that team. Kind of because I'm high on Sam Darnold, and I don't really, and I think Zach Ertz still has a lot of value moving on late in the season. But you just have a team that's just absolutely rock solid, top to bottom, defense, offense, special teams. I mean, this is an absolutely fantastic team, and that is what the hot take is for this week. Next week, it might be It might be the opposite. I'm experimenting with some ideas and trying to figure out what to do that won't make people sad, because I don't want to pick somebody's team up and be like, look at this garbage fire that somebody drafted. I don't want to be that guy. But that is the hot take of the week, which leads us to the rankings. Apparently the voice crack edition this week. And we have a pretty interesting development here with Matt, Ass, Doug, and James all leapfrogging Mike in the stats from the last 3 weeks. Really interesting to see that because a lot of people thought Mike's team was just absolutely just studs top to bottom. And I'm beginning to think that he may be coming back to the pack a little bit. Or maybe other people are just getting better, like Matt S., Doug, James, Tyler, stuff like that. But we'll look more into that later. These are the stats for now. Take a look at them because they're going to be gone in 3, 2, 1. And at 12th in the C class, we have Nick. Nick is remaining near the bottom because his team is just, it's not great. Like, yeah, if he gets Patrick Mahomes back, his team definitely gets a bump. If Brandon Cooks and AJ Green, if they come off of their injuries and they play well, like that's what his issue is right now. Like, if you have as your lineup Mahomes, Hill, AJ Green, Cooks in the flex, and then you have Mark Ingram and insert 49ers running back, insert Benny Snell if he was healthy, insert another running back, this team would be a lot higher up. But the issue right now is we don't know when Patrick Mahomes is going to be back. A lot of people are saying he could be back this week, but with him being week to week, if he doesn't play this week and they beat Minnesota anyways, maybe they say, well, we can maybe take next week off too against the Chargers. I know it's a divisional rival, but still, they're not a great team. Maybe we can have him suit up, and if we need him, we can put him in like the second half and try to make a comeback. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure how they're going to work that. Brendan Cooks, he's seeing concussion experts on his bye week. That's never a good sign because it's the second one of the season. Also not great. And AJ Green, who knows how grumpy he's going to be. He might decide, I'm just going to sit out the rest of the season and just take the big ol' L because I don't want to be franchise tagged. I want to go out there and I want to get signed for another 3-4 year deal, make another $50 to $60 million instead of getting a 1 year. Instead of getting a 1 year franchise tag, potentially getting hurt one more time, and then losing a step, losing the ability to jump the way I can jump, move my body the way I can move, and then suddenly AJ Green's, a guy that people are signing off the street in week 3 because their guy got hurt, and he's just kind of like, cool, I'm here, I'm doing something. Like, I don't think that's what people want. I don't think that's what he wants. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that turns out. So for right now, Nick, your team is in 12th because I'm just afraid of a lot of what you got going on. And it's just going to be really hard for you to convince me that Jordan Howard, Matt Breida, and all of them are, these high-end running backs that you think that they are. Sorry, dude. In number 11, we have myself. I've been sliding pretty hard lately as my team just continues to look worse and worse as the weeks go on. There was a time when I had a pretty bonkers team, and then I traded away good players for bad players, and now I'm here. I think my team's still a team. It still is competitive every given week, but like I really need Davante Adams back. I really need OBJ to come on, and if they don't, then they don't, and then I'm just kind of in a rough spot. There's not really anything I can do about that at this point because I don't have the trade value. Like, I don't have that like stud, like huge player like I did last week or 2 weeks ago, rather, before I traded for Le'Veon Bell. I could have probably done a really good thing with like, trading away Davante Adams and Zeke and gotten back, 3 or 4 really decent starters. Instead, I punted on Zeke, going all in on Le'Veon Bell. Definitely over trading for Bell to get him. And now I'm just in a rough spot. My team's not good. I'm all in on the Jets, which isn't really looking great. So yeah, not a good team for me. But hey, that's the break. Sometimes that happens. I still have a shot to make the playoffs. Hopefully, I can at least make my money back this year. But that is what it is. At number 10, we have my division mate, my compatriot Jerry. Now, Jerry's team is deceptively good. I think it is a lot better than 10th, but I can't justify moving it up right now because it hasn't really been putting up the numbers. And it also has things like, like James White, Austin Eckler, Juju, Golden Tate. Like, those are all people he has starting right now. And I really can't stomach that being a team that's any higher than in the C class right now. Yes, you have Matthew Stafford and Cooper and Kelsey. Those are 3 absolute studs. Just set it and forget it with those guys. But the issue becomes things like, is Eckler going to keep his workload? Is White going to be the guy any given week in New England? Or is it going to be, Burkhead now that he's healthy? Is he going to take more touches? What's going to happen with that? Yeah, Golden Tate's cool, but now they got Shepard and everybody else back. That team is full of mouths to feed. Do you think they're going to make Golden Tate the guy that they're going to feature in the passing game? I mean, they could maybe get taken away sometimes. yeah, it's just a really, really rough team looking at. And then, yeah, you have Todd Gurley. I mean, Todd Gurley's great if he's healthy, if he's playing, if he doesn't get a weird leg contusion that takes him out for a couple weeks. And then you're like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do with this information? He just has a hurt leg. Like, he only played 2 of the last 4 weeks, I think. Like, so it's just a really rough spot. And I like Jerry's team. I like his players. I like what he's got going on. It's just feels weird to give him a bump in positioning when all those players come with a bunch of huge question marks. So that is why he sits at number 10. At number 9, we have Malcolm. This one isn't for the memes. This is, I think, pretty legit. I think Scary Terry is starting to get scary for the players starting Terry because he just isn't getting looks, which is really surprising. He's not getting good looks from his college quarterback in Haskins. And with Haskins being the starter moving forward, it could be, a quarter, but moving forward at least, I think that's going to be pretty hard for him to do anything with. Christian Kirk is also starting to get phased out of that Arizona offense. They're starting to look at, Isabella and all these other players. So that's, a thing that's happening. Jameis Winston, he can blow up on any given week. I mean, look at his stats. He's got 5 touchdowns and 7 interceptions over the last 4 weeks, which is only 3 games for him, but still, like, that's not great. You're averaging less than 2 touchdowns and more than 2 interceptions. I mean, it's not great. 3 lost fumbles, too, on top of that. Like, if they had anyone behind him in Tampa Bay, he might have been benched by now. And then you have other people like Derrick Henry, who, I mean, tons of touches, tons of yards, tons of receptions, or not a ton of receptions, though, in a half PPR league, and only 2 touchdowns. Now, only 2 touchdowns over the last 4 weeks. Mark, what are you complaining about? That's fine. I agree, it's fine. It's just something that, is a little bit scary because he's probably going to be a guy who's going to get you 10 points a week. And maybe 16 if he gets a touchdown. Like, that could just be the guy he turns into at some point, and that's not a great thing to have, especially with the price you paid for him, and especially, I mean, that's fine. It's fine. It's a good running back, too, but I don't think a lot of people think of him as running back, too, right now, and I don't really like him as that. And then, Singletary, who, if he ends up becoming anything more than Devin Singletary, last 3 weeks, he's only got 10 touches in the running game and only 4 receptions. That's not great. And then the rest of your team, you have, just a lot of people who are really kind of scary. Like Tom Brady, you never know what's going to happen with him. Your tight end situation's kind of fluky. Now, you do have Michael Thomas. You do have Darrell Henderson. And if anything happens to Gurley, Henderson's going to inherit that workload. You have Michael Thomas. And Michael Thomas, he's a great player. Absolutely fantastic. But he's on a bye this week, and you need a win. So, got to dock you for that. So that is why you're down here at number 9 at the top of the C division, though. We now move up to B class. And up here in the B class, we have a player, Sean, who, when I kind of locked in where I felt people were going to be, well before the on Thursday, and then took the pictures and dropped them into the file later. And I think I might need to upgrade Sean a little bit based on the performance of Kenyon Drake. If DJ is out for an extended period of time, I think Kenyon Drake could just be a real thing. I mean, he looked absolutely fantastic and reinvigorated on the offense that is trying a bunch of really new things. And in the event that DJ ends up having to be out for the season or gets another injury or something like that, I think Drake could definitely be a running back too, which is great because that's where you have him. Because you also have Marlon Mack, who, has some tough matchups coming up, but he's also one of those type of guys who, is a high-end running back too because he's going to get a lot of touches. He's going to get a touchdown every other week. He's going to be one of those 10 to 16 points per week guys, and that's fine a lot of the time as a running back too to get. So, it works for you. And then in other news, you have things like, your tight end is Evan Ingram, who's, another mouth to feed in the Giants, so that's going to be tough to see how that works out. So that's docks you a little bit. But on the other end, you have Deshaun Watson, Keenan Allen, Michael Gallup's been really good too. Emmanuel Sanders has looked like a real thing. You got Calvin Ridley just hanging out on the bench for you. Deshaun Jackson, who you picked off waivers after some idiot dropped him to pick up Flash because he was like, no one's going to pay attention to waivers on a Saturday. And then you pay attention to waivers on a Saturday and sniped him on me. And you got Jalen Samuels, who, if Connor's out long term, which he might be, who knows, if he's out long term, guess what? You have Jalen Samuels. He's the number one running back in Pittsburgh, and that offense desperately needs to go through the running back because their offense doesn't really look great unless they're playing against Miami. So, I mean, this is another team that next week you could see this team a lot higher. But for now, it is going to sit at number 8, just behind James at number 7. Now, James has a very good team as well. And I didn't want to move it up super quick because it was only at 11 last week because it had been underperforming. But I think at this point it's safe for me to move him up based on the fact that he has Dalvin Cook and Aaron Jones, who have been absolutely fantastic. He's got a nice matchup game that he can play with Derek Carr and Carson Wentz as wide receivers. Tyler Lockett took a little bit of a hit with Flash, but I don't know how many touches Flash is going to be getting. I'm hoping a lot because I picked him up off waivers. But Tyler Lockett, maybe he just needs that field stretcher to really break out. I mean, he's been a pretty good player. Don't misquote me on that. He's been very good. Tyler Lockett has, but maybe having another field stretcher out there is going to make him even better. And he's got T.Y. Hilton too, who has been really like the key to Indianapolis playing well. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but when T.Y. does well, the Colts do well, and when he doesn't do well, the Colts don't do well. So maybe it's one of those things where they just need to kind of feed him. And if they realize that as a coaching staff, I think that could be really, really good. Oh, and then who else do you have on over here hanging out? Just Alshon Jeffrey and Kenny Golladay, two really, really good wide receivers. Probably in the wide receiver 2 conversation, maybe peeking their heads up a little bit in some people's rankings. I mean, I really think that you have a very good team, James. I just don't want to move you up too quickly, so I'm going to keep you at number 7 for now in the B class, and then we're going to move on up to the A class. And in the A class, we have Matt M. Man, you were number 2 last week, and then I had to knock you down just because, the whole David Johnson thing and Chase Edmonds thing. Yeah, if you were able to keep one of them, that would have been great, but you just weren't able to. I mean, you have some good defensive people and special teams people, which I can't show right now because it doesn't look good because Yahoo's trash. But you still have a lot of other really good people. Like, if Sanu becomes a thing in New England, that's going to be great for you. But you also have Marvin Jones and Sammy Watkins, so you should be able to play matchups with them on any given week and end up being really good in one scheme or another. And then for your running backs, if you get DJ back, then you have DJ and Josh Jacobs, which I think is a very good combination. And then you also have pretty decent wide receivers that are in your wide receiver slots with DJ Chark, who's been playing like a number 1 wide receiver this season, and Allen Robinson, who could finish the season as a number 1 wide receiver in that top 12 discussion. And you have a pretty good quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, and Dak Prescott, rather, as well. So, I think you really deserve to be higher than number 6. It was just very difficult because I think there's a lot of people all together, and I had to put somebody at 6. Because I think that 7, 6, 5, and 4 are all in the same range. And I think you all agree when I look at Matt S here at number 5. He moved up for number 6 from last week. Now, again, this was before everything happened on the Thursday Night Football game. But I think you just have a lot of really solid players. Josh Allen, yeah, he's good on the bye, but then you get Drew Brees back for the rest of the season, and he hasn't been throwing, he hasn't been getting hit. And he's an older guy, so I think that's going to be really great for him because he's going to be a lot fresher coming in for the rest of the season now that he can really grip a football and sling it around like he can. You have Mike Evans, who, while, yeah, he's the number 2 wide receiver in Tampa Bay, he's still in the discussion for being a number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. D.D. Westbrook's been looking really good with Gardner Minshew out there. But you also have Robert Woods, who I think is, going to look a lot better now that they don't have to distribute the ball to 3 different players if Cooks is out long term. I mean, you just have a lot of really good players on your team, dude. And your bench is full of really good players, too, like Austin Hooper and Kenny Stills. So while your starters might not be great this week, I think long-term your team's going to be very, very good. So, yeah, great job on your team, Matt. And to stay in that same little, these 3 or 4 teams here are really, really tight. You can probably even lump James in at number 7 into this group of people who are really, really tight. they all have a couple issues where there's some people who are kind of like, I'm not really sure about that. But now we find number 4. We find Doug. He moved up one from last week. He's got Aaron Rodgers, who's just come alive as of late. DJ Moore, who's a guy, so it's not great that you have him, but you really don't have anybody else to slot in as your wide receiver. Number 2 behind Julian Edelman, who, is probably going to look a lot better now that they have Sanu on the field. It might free up, it should free up Edelman a little bit at least. But then you have at your running back some pretty good ones with Saquon, Lindsey, and Connor. If you can flip one of those for a running back 2 or running back 3, somewhere in that range, and end up getting a pretty good wide receiver, maybe send like Connor. Yeah, he's injured, so that might be tough. Maybe send like Lindsey, Freeman, and Moore. Because I think all 3 of those have some pretty decent value. And just try to get like a little bit less of a running back for a bigger upgrade at wide receiver. I think that could be a really good thing for you to do, because that'll definitely make your wide receiver position a lot better. You can move Connor up to your running back 2 slot, and then in your flex, you can put that new running back you just got, or Jamal Williams if he ends up taking over the role, or any number of other players that you have. So I think you're in a really good position too, Doug. But you're not in a good position as these 3. And like I said, and I have alluded to throughout this entire broadcast, I think Mike's team is starting to come back to the pack to the point where 2 people have actually passed him at this point. Yeah, Russell Wilson's going to be a lot better after he got Flash. Maybe a lot's overselling it. I think he might get better. But his big issue right now is he's just not, he's throwing less passes, but his efficiency is just so insane. So maybe that's good with Flash, because, Flash is an efficiency machine. He just runs long routes, catches insane things, and then just goes, haha, I'm Flash. But I think that, Wilson's going to get better as season goes on, but that's not where your issues lie. Your issues right now lie in your tight end, your running back 2 slot, and your flex. Because everyone knows that DeAndre Hopkins is great. Jamison Crowder, I think, is going to be pretty good rest of the season with a very, very easy schedule. Christian McCaffrey's, he's CMC. So let's start looking at the tight end position. Just to go over it really quickly, I already talked about it. Zach Ertz he's a guy. He's a top 7 guy, but he's not one of those top 3 guys anymore. He's not the guy. He's not even the guy anymore on the Philadelphia Eagles. There's just too many mouths to feed. He's not getting those great throws into the end zone every single week. He's not looking like an absolute dominant force out there, and that's showing. Yeah, is he good? He's a great physical athlete. He's definitely a great tight end. He's just not really translating it into fantasy football at this point, and maybe that turns around the second half of the season. Maybe they realize, well, hey, maybe we need to feed this guy. Maybe this guy is the key to our offense getting better. Hit him on some seams, get him some mismatches in the red zone or on third down. Maybe they start working him a little bit more. But with Goddard I think it's Goddard. I hope it's Goddard. I've been saying his name all day. But as good as the second tight end in Philly has been, sometimes you just gotta, just work the other guy, because Zach Ertz is getting covered by a safety, and the other guy's getting covered by a linebacker or defensive end. It's an easy matchup if they're both in the same, world, and I think that's what's happened with Zach Ertz. And for your running backs, you have an issue with Melvin Gordon, David Montgomery, and Adrian Peterson. For one, Adrian Peterson's old. He's getting more competition in as the other running backs on the roster get healthy with Geis and Thompson. So that's not great. So, he is probably the third of that group. But then you have David Montgomery, who had one good game all season long, and Melvin Gordon, who sat out for a long time and has yet to really retake that role as being the number 1. And even when he does get touches, they haven't been great. Now, they could just be saving him for the playoffs, but you got to make the playoffs first. So that argument kind of goes out the window when you look at their record and say, no, the Chargers really need to be just saying at this point, look, if Gordon's the best guy to win us the game, we got to feed him 25 times a game. Sorry, Eckler, you're just not the guy. Or, they got to do something. So I think that Melvin Gordon maybe doesn't look as good as he has in years past right now. Um, or maybe he looks as good as he has in years past. And last season, where he had a much better yards per carry and everything like that, was not standard. Maybe that was just he had a really good season, and that was his best season. And now he's going to go back to being that 3 to 4 yards per carry guy. Falls in the end zone a couple times. About maybe half a time a week or something like that. Maybe a little bit more. But, it's not great, and I think that's showing right now. Now having him as your running back 2 is good, but you still, maybe he's not even a running back 2 at this point. Maybe he's closer to running back 3 or a flex. Yeah, that's not great. And then you got David Montgomery and Adrian Peterson backing him up. Maybe you can play matchups with that and make something work, but you got to play 2 every single week because it's not like you're going to be throwing out Cooper Kupp. You're going to be throwing him into the wide receiver slot when he gets back. So Jameson Crowder, while he has good matchups, could just not be good. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to rant about Mike's team. I just think it's starting to regress, and that makes him number 3. And number 2, we have Dave. Dave, has an absolutely fantastic team, but, again, has some question marks. And that's the thing with his top tier. It is no longer, stud Mike with his absolutely fantastic team. It's a couple teams, and they all have question marks still. So Dave going on the strategy this week of let's just load up on people on bye, and then next week I can just, cruise because he'll be basically done with people on bye at that point. But he's got, Lamar Jackson, Cortland Sutton, Tyrell Williams, Alvin Kamara, Devin Freeman, Devontae Freeman, Tyler Boyd. He's been pretty good. A.J. Brown, he's been pretty good. And then he's got Chubb in there, Marquise Brown. I mean, his team is from top to bottom, even on the bench, full of players you look at and you go, oh, yeah, those are good players. Those are guys who can really do something. And because he has this glut of talent, he can go one of 2 ways for the rest of the season. He has a luxury, unlike other teams, of saying, I will trade you 2 players that are good for your player who is great. And a lot of teams, at this point, mine included, really need that. If I had a great player and you offered me 2 good players, I'd probably take it. Now, I have gotten offers like that, and I've turned them down because I'm stubborn and I hate myself. And, people like Tyler, they've been sending me great trades that probably anyone else in the league would take because they're just, they're very solid trades and make my team look a lot better. But I'm an idiot and I'm not taking them. Malcolm, same things. These guys are sending me pretty decent trades, and I'm just not taking them because I'm being stubborn, and that's going to be my downfall. And I know it, so I'm just going to live with it. But he doesn't have to do that. He can sit there and he can make those trades, or on the other side of it, he can sit there and he can say, all right, I don't need that. I'm going to sit back, and every week I'm going to look at my matchups, and I'm just going to play the best, juiciest matchups of every single week. Because he has really good players all over the place, but if Tyrell Williams has a really bad matchup like he might have this week with Slay, he has a bunch of people on bye right now, but he could easily just go, okay, I'm going to put Tyler Boyd in. Or maybe Marquise Brown has a great matchup. I'm going to put him in. Like, you could just easily just go, shrug, put in a different guy, avoid the bad matchup, and not have to risk it. I absolutely love this team. I think this might be the best team in the league, but I got to give it to Tyler. Because he also has he's got basically, his team isn't as deep, but it has bigger spikes. Matt Ryan's going to be a top 5 quarterback this season. That's just a fact. Chris Godwin's a wide receiver 1, as is Julio Jones, as might be Adam Thielen for the rest of the season when he's healthy. That's 3 really, really good wide receivers. Who else does he have? Oh, he's got Mike Williams. Cool. That's a pretty good guy you can play if any of those other 3 big guys get hurt. Now let's go over to the running backs. Who does he have? Oh, Leonard Fournette and Chris Carson. 2 guys who are probably going to be running back 1s for the rest of the season. And then on top of that, who does he have on his bench? Rashad Penny backing up Chris Carson, so everything happens to him, he'll be absolutely fine. He can just plug in the handcuff. And if something happens to Fournette, yeah, that really, really sucks, but his backup's probably on waivers. He can just spend a bunch of money to get him. or he can, roll the dice on the Ronald Jones, Peyton Barber train, or he can figure something else out and make a trade. Like, I think Tyler's team is the best right now, in a different way from Dave's. Dave, every position is a starter on somebody's team. Tyler, every single player who is a starter on his team is well above any other team. And I mean, he just his offense does not have somebody who is not absolutely phenomenal and a must-have. And he's done it slowly over the course of the season, but that is what he has. Top 5 quarterback, 2 wide receiver ones to go in his wide receiver slots, 2 running back ones in his running back slots, a top 5 tight end, and, oh, by the way, probably a borderline wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, and Adam Thielen in his flex. And if that doesn't work well enough for him, he's got a ton of players he can do other stuff with. He's got fab money he can throw around. So I think that's why Tyler is the number 1 this week. And with that, I am hit the hour mark of my talking, and my throat is absolutely killing me. So thank you guys for paying attention. Thank you guys for listening. And as always, I will see you guys next week with more from Horsehead Fantasy Football League. Have a nice night, everybody. Goodbye.